Hi there, listeners. One quick favor. Please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a world of difference and helps others find the podcast. Thanks. Welcome to Not Suitable for Work. I'm your host, Peter C. Diamond. You think your office is nuts? Wait until you hear some of these stories.
And there's nothing like making a joke and looking at a room full of people who, are just stone-faced, and they know that you blew it.
What about our professional dynamic has given you a license to act in this way?
So we're kind of like, okay, got it. We'll fly around for a little. Sounds like we'll be fine. We didn't panic at all.
With each podcast, I interview folks who have a humorous work story to share. Along the way, I'll offer advice to help you make sense of your own office nonsense. Don't worry, no careers were harmed in making Not Suitable for Work. Names and places may have been changed to protect the not so innocent. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Today, there is hyper-awareness around creating work environments of kindness and collaboration. All for one and one for all. Rising tides lift all boats. You catch my drift. To what length would you go to help a colleague in need? Are there limits if it could impact your career? My guest, Jana O'Brien, a marketing and media consultant, shares her story.
I started there in the early 1980s, kind of prehistoric versus 2018. And they were certainly a very different time in terms of corporate culture, a more formal business protocol, and certainly a more formal dress code. It was long before casual Fridays and Dockers and then anything goes.
Yeah, how would you describe what the typical dress code was for you back in that time?
80% dresses or skirts and blouses, 20% pantsuits, let's harken back to a Hillary Clinton look, but not quite so polyester maybe, and colorful. And the story centers around certainly dress up for presentations.
Okay. And I don't want to jump ahead, but like because I was working during that time, and what I remember is like women wearing the suit. It was like a women's suit, so it would be the jacket with the skirt that
demure
was
skirt,
demure
proper
skirt.
length.
I was going to say like below the knee, but also like the blouse. And I always remember like the bow tie,
little ribbon
right?
ties.
Yeah,
yes, that was definitely 80s.
This is kind of I guess working girl was that late?
A little later.
A little later, okay. But it's kind of just that very truly buttoned up look.
And certainly you worked in the client service side of agencies, and they were the most buttoned up. In the research and strategy group that I was in, we could be a little less suitish and a little more dress, cute skirt, nice sweater, but certainly not what became casual and then anything goes later. So particularly that was true on presentation days. And so this story is all about making sure you're wearing proper dress on presentation day. So you're thinking 1982, and I was about to give a presentation to what I would call ranked people in client service and creative, some advertising copy research on a whole new campaign. And so it was a presentation at 1:30 in the afternoon, and I was set to go, and it was about 11 in the morning.
Okay. And in this in the room, right? So is this kind of
I'm not there yet.
You're not there yet. Okay. All right. Slow down, Peter.
So it's 11.
Okay.
And I'll cast my boss. My boss was a real character. She was a 30-something single woman, real cute blonde, highlighted hair, shoulder length, very extroverted, a laugh that carried across the whole department, and pretty known for being kind of crazy. And She had recently met a guy at a wedding that she just was swept off of her feet after she met him, but he lived out of town. And so she never thought she'd see the guy again. But lo and behold, that morning, he calls her. He's in town. He wants to have lunch with her. So she barrels into my office and says, Michael just called, and he wants to have lunch with me. Look at me. And this might not be familiar to people that have been born in the last 30 years, but she is wearing what was sold at Pier 1 in the early 80s as a Pakistani peasant tablecloth dress. Kind of hot pink, sheer, no nylons, and flip-flops. And she says, I can't wear this to have lunch with him. I look horrendous.
Because when she met him at the wedding...
She was in the wedding. So
she was in the wedding, so she was...
A bridesmaid.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So she
looks like a 70s hippie right
it.
now. And so she's freaking out. And so I looked at the clock. I said, well, what time's lunch? She goes, 11:30. I'm dressed up. I said, all right, you can wear my suit. Because it was really beautiful. Imagine, this is, 1982. It is a very soft pink linen, brand new suit, untailored, so it's a little loose and casual, but gorgeous. I had spent more money on that outfit than probably anything I'd ever bought in my professional life. And a white casual summer sweater underneath it, short-sleeved shell of a sweater.
So this is the first time you've worn it
for this presentation.
For this presentation.
So I said, all right, I will switch with you because we're the same size, but you got to be back by no later than 1:10. She says, I totally will. I have to be at your presentation. I said, sure, you're my boss. Okay, cool.
I love it.
So
1:10.
Yeah.
1:10.
Because my presentation was 1:30. Got to do the change time and then still get upstairs to client service floor. So off she goes, looking really fine, I might say, in my light pink suit. And I am not looking fine in her Pakistani peasant tablecloth dress. So yeah, you can figure out what happened.
And there was you did this with no hesitation.
No, she was a great boss, crazy lady. We all wanted Carol to find the man. We loved her. Everyone loved her. And this could be it. So we all wanted to facilitate that relationship. Yes, indeed. Not a hesitation. A little hesitation about her timeliness because she wasn't the most timely person. But yeah. So you know what happened. 1 o'clock. Tick, tick. 1:05. Tick, tick. So my good friend Kathy, she knows I'm freaking out. She's in the next aisle. She's walking in and she's like, look, push comes to shove. If Carol doesn't show, we can switch clothes. I said, because she's in this great-looking red dress, which I can still see with a white little Peter Pan collar. I actually had almost the same dress in navy blue. I knew it would fit me.
And so you guys are about the same size?
We are the same. It must have been
I was going to
perfect.
What are the odds?
So tick, tick, tick. It's 1:20. I got to go. So Kathy and I go to the ladies' room and we switch clothes. So let's keep score here. Carol's in my light pink brand new suit. Kathy's in Carol's Pakistani peasant dress with no slip, I might add, because her dress had a built-in slip. And this is so she's in her office, kind of in a knot, hoping no one of importance walks in her office. And I'm in her really cute red and white proper dress. And off I go steaming to my meeting. All right, so I go into the meeting. Kathy's in her cube, cowering. I go into the meeting, and the account supervisor on the business, or she might have even been an account director by then, but she was the future CEO of the Leo Burnett Company. She is in the meeting.
And I believe that may be someone who's been on Not Suitable for Work in the past.
One of the finest executives I've ever worked with. And I chased her in whatever account she worked on. I ended up following her there. So she's there, and the account soup was always there first. So she says, Gina, what's up? You look pretty stressed. And I said, I kind of gave her the Polaroid version of what had happened. And she's howling because she knows Carol too. And this is a pretty typical Carol story. So off we go into the presentation. All right, it's all going fine. Go back down to the 4th floor of the old Prudential building. Kathy's cowering in her office, and all of a sudden she hears those very familiar footsteps because Carol had a gait that was well known. Blip, 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 coming down the hall. Kathy stands up, walks out of her office, puts her elbow on her cube, and leans against it. Carol's like 20 feet away, stops in her footsteps and goes, "You're in my dress." She said, "Yeah, Carol, it's 1:45. Jana's upstairs doing her presentation in my dress." So Carol says, "You want to switch clothes?" And Kathy goes, "Carol, why would I want to be the third person today to wear Jana's brand new light pink suit? Why don't you just go on upstairs and go to the meeting 20 minutes late?" And so Kathy crawls back in her cube, hoping no one will come. Carol comes upstairs.
So Carol was supposed to be in the meeting as well.
She's my boss. She was supposed to be my backup. I was just a lowly assistant analyst at the time. So Carol comes blaring into the room. I'm almost done with the presentation. It's going fine. They always did. I was good enough. And Linda, the door flings open. Carol busts in. Linda turns, looks over her shoulder, looks at Carol up and down, leans back, looks over at me and goes, "Nice suit." As it turns out, Carol married that guy. So, I don't know. I'm not sure how the marriage went, but she married that guy. I feel like I had a small part in making that first official date go well, because I'm sure when she walked in that restaurant, she looked awesome.
Sounds like she looked pretty amazing.
My suit was awesome, and she was darn cute. And I was happy to serve. It gave us 30 years of laughter because it was like the quintessential Leo Burnett, we'll do anything for anybody's story. And she eventually married him, moved out of town to live where he lived, and we all did fine and lived happily ever after. So,
yeah. So it's listening to this story, a couple things, because one is, especially in that time, women got a little bit of a knock for not always helping one another to succeed and be supportive.
Yes. Not just in that time.
Well, not just in that time,
in
right?
All time.
In all times. But, I love the fact that it sounded like there was absolutely no hesitation.
No, I loved this woman. I had learned to work with her well. She was a blast to have as a boss, lots of laughter, as there always was. That company had an amazing culture, and she was a high end of it instead of a low end of it, for sure. Kathy and I went to college together. We had known each other forever, and we're definitely there for each other. As it turned out later in life, I became her boss, and then she became my boss, and then we both split, and we were both bosses, and so that friendship was lasting and forever. But yeah, we were just that tight. That was the way it was.
And I think that's, clearly it goes to, having those relationships and a level of camaraderie. But I also have this vision, I'm trying to think of, would guys do that for each other?
Well, first of all, guys' suits wouldn't fit each other like.
Well, I was going to say, I
don't
think a guy would ever say, if they
take the shirt off my back.
Yeah, literally take the shirt off my back, or hey, you can wear I see that you're not dressed appropriately, you can wear my suit. I don't even think guys would. Maybe they would give you their jacket, but definitely I think when it comes to trousers would never be exchanged. But the other thing, I'm also just thinking of this image of you guys in the women's bathroom, clothes being tossed over the kind of the stall.
And if you remember the Prudential building, the women's bathroom was a city block away from our offices. So there was a lot of back and forth in the course of the 3 hours prior to this big meeting.
Probably not the nicest bathrums.
Yeah, they
either.
were just institutional. Yeah, it was sort of like high school.
Right.
Bathrooms.
So then you're
without
having
the graffiti.
Just having this I just imagine clothes being flung across from one place to the other. And did anyone else in the office notice? What?
People knew.
So
it was well known. It became very quickly well known what was going on, and pretty much all of our circle of friends, of which there were many people in that group, were Well, frankly, between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, people were saying, "What were you thinking? You know she's not going to be back on time." I mean, that's just not her nature.
Well, and she's kind of with this guy who, if it's going well, she's going to want to spend time. She's not going to say, "Oh, okay, well, I have to get back." Like, it's going to be, "Hey, this is," to her, apparently was a little bit of a once in a lifetime thing. So, I'm not going to cut this lunch short.
Yeah, and knowing her, she just got lost in the
moment,
the Disney
yeah,
of it.
Of course.
So,
of course.
yeah. So, but I would do it again.
So
it was great fun.
So I was going to say, looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I don't think so. I'm glad I didn't have to go to the meeting in the peasant dress. That would have been something to explain, but it would have been a good story even then. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to go. I'm glad I had a person of my basic size that could give me the shirt off her back, so to speak, and give me something cute to wear. But, you look at it through the lens of 2018. It's one of the many kinds of things, if I tell my sons or my stepdaughters stories like this, it's so hard for them to imagine clothing at work being that important, because that's just not the culture. My son's in advertising. It's just not the culture of the workplace then. But in hindsight, we all spent an enormous amount of our annual income in those first few years on clothing,
just
to be properly dressed. I remember Kathy's husband, who also worked at the company, spending his first few paychecks on 2 suits that he rotated between. I mean, it was just a different era, and it was fun. It was fun to have something. I always like to go home and change clothes at the end of a workday, because it was like molting or changing over to being a different person. Even when I became a parent, even if I was wearing casual Friday, I had to change clothes when I went home, because that said it's done with that, and now it's time for this. So I liked that part of it. It made the transformation better. And I think now it's harder to make that mental transformation without some physical act that does that. So there was some merit, although it was an expensive thing to dress up. It was also just kind of fun to look really, really nice, kind of 5 days a week. But it would have been an easier presentation in 2018.
It does get to a really interesting point about the fact that because of kind of the acceptance and the looseness of how people dress, unless you're in probably certain industries, maybe banking, I think, is still pretty formal, but laws and yes, still pretty formal. You would, it would kind of, people wouldn't even think about it. It would be like, all right, I now have to go give this presentation. I wasn't expecting it, and cool, whatever I'm wearing is kind of what I'm wearing. I remember, so I started kind of working in the business world back in 1985, and I remember getting a kind of like an etiquette book as a graduation present, and one of the suggestions for men was you should always have a starched, boxed shirt in your drawer with a tie, ready in case in the evening you have to go out for a client dinner or something. And I just remember reading it and even thinking, first of all, I couldn't even afford to have my shirts go to the dry cleaner and have them boxed. But there was kind of that level of preparedness of being, how clothing did play that important role.
Oh, and there were books published in the late 70s, when women were first going into, business, a management track. And I remember we all were told to buy them when we were graduating. Games Mother Never Taught You, and there were 2 or 3 that were the books you needed to buy and read. And I think it was in Games Mother Never Taught You. It was, you have to always keep a spare pair of pantyhose in your briefcase in case you might get a run. And these kind of cosmetics and spot remover and things like that, because God help you if you ever had a run in your pantyhose when you were in a big meeting. And, the hairspray and all those things, a whole list of, you must look the part at all times. So yeah, it's fascinating when when I go do a training program at the agency or go have lunch with an old friend or something like that to just see what walks off the elevator. And frankly, I think there's a statement about the 90s, that transformational era when one by one, each department sort of one at a time changed their dress code. First, the creatives, who never really had one that much. But what was the next that could transform? And I would say media, probably, if they weren't meeting with reps and things like that. And then research. But it was that strange evolutionary period from when you were underdressed, like I was going to be in the 80s, to being judged by creatives as being overdressed and still sort of the shill and right-hand person of client service. And you had to kind of tactically say, this is my day, I have to be more like the creative, so I'm going to dress down and kind of make sure they know I'm their friend and advocate and trying to get their work through in a good, positive way rather than looking like I could be a surrogate client service person. And all the rules were being rewritten under the guise of a changing time. And you think back, that was a confusing decade, and then after 2000 it was pretty straightforward. And okay, no halter tops and no flip-flops mostly, but we're more interested in your ideas and your brain power and succeeding and moving the client forward than looking like you're something out of GQ magazine or one of the many local places where all the client service people had to shop to get Bigsby back in the day. And
oh, Bigsby, yes, I remember. I think I bought a suit from there. So I have one final question for you. So the relationship that you had, both with your boss Carol, right, and with Kathy, were kind of there were years that you had worked together to form that relationship, which then made it very like you just didn't even think twice about doing that. Any thought in today's world where people don't stay at companies long, like the average tenure for a lot of employees is 3 years, without kind of that relationship and that connection, like would people be as willing to do something, like to do something like that in today's world?
Well, it's interesting. I've been paying a lot of attention to a lot that's been written lately about recruiting. And, I'd only really worked at Burnett for about a year when this all happened. I think it's more how well the company recruits to a certain type of person who's going to instantly fit into a culture and an ethos and a value system. I think companies that really succeed have a very defined, clear value system that everybody knows, and they look for people who will subscribe to that value system. And nobody was as good as Leo Burnett in the ad agency world, maybe BBDO in New York, at hiring to a value system. And so I think it depends on whether it's a company like that who hires to a certain kind of ethos and value system where you walk in the door and we're this kind of people and we're meant to like each other and kind of be a friendship group. Whereas if you're a factory and you're just hiring drones and you just want people to do the job, and I know they're only going to stay 2 years, and frankly, I don't even know what our value system is, so I can't teach it to you, and I'm not going to hire to it because we probably don't have one. I would say in that kind of company, you might not get that, or it's going to be in pockets where cohorts form out of their own volition rather than the company's volition. I would say there are companies. I do training for Amazon sometimes, and they clearly recruit to a core values of Jeff Bezos. And, you have to actually clear those in the hurdles of getting hired there. So I would say whatever that ethos is or a value system, yes, it probably would happen there. I just think it's less common now in a publicly held quarterly earnings. People aren't going to stay long. I always ask myself, is that a cause or an effect? Is the ethos gone away from most companies because of the new business-driven rules, or is it because people don't stay long and so it's not worth it? But I think if it's a company like that, I believe still you would still have people that would literally give the shirt off their back for a peer in the right situation.
Great. Jan O'Brien, thank you very much for being on Not Suitable for Work.
Thank you. My pleasure.
What I love about this story is there was no hesitation on behalf of any of these women to do something as personal as change clothes in order to help each other out. This behavior is not written in a company ethos or on a list of values. This is about hiring quality people who support and care about one another. These are the people who build a strong company culture. But this got me thinking. A good interviewing question might be, would you give a coworker the shirt or dress or hoodie off your back in a time of need? If you want more Not Suitable for Work or have a work story to share, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Not Suitable for Work. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Now, here's something new. If you have a question you want answered on a future episode, call us at 872-256-0827 and leave us a message. I'm Peter C. Diamond. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter C. Diamond. Not Suitable for Work is produced by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Until next time.